Uh, 大家好, thank you, Dr. Lee, Dr. Zhang, other distinguished colleagues. Also my former colleague, Dr. Fullerton. Hello, Bob. I'm quite nervous to be the first speaker today with so many distinguished people from many countries. As Dr. Lee mentioned, my topic is about international markets for new fruit varieties. And that connects to the topic of this workshop about GAP, because one of the reasons to implement GAP is to support the markets for your fruit varieties, new ones and old ones, both locally where they're grown and also internationally in new markets. May I have the next slide, please? So briefly, TNG is established in New Zealand over 120 years ago. We are a fresh produce company, mainly fresh fruit, and we have a network of sales, marketing, and supply companies around the world, and we're selling fresh produce in 60 countries. Next slide, please. We are also the global manager and marketer of some premium apple varieties, which are very popular with consumers around the world. And based on the 25 years experience we've had to commercialize or to grow and supply and sell these varieties in many countries around the world, I've drawn on some of that experience to make my comments about, with some suggestions or some thoughts about how to enter new international markets with your new tropical fruit varieties. Next slide, please. So this is basically the contents of my presentation. I'll talk a little bit about the reasons why it's worthwhile to develop international markets, and then how to go about that, and some of the choices or the strategies that can be followed to successfully take your new fruit varieties to different markets. Next slide, please. So it seems like an obvious question, but why should we consider developing international markets for new fruit varieties? So basically, there are economic, social, and technical benefits for local growers and other participants in the value chain, both locally and internationally, by achieving the largest scale that can be obtained by supplying a new fruit variety in more than one market, more than just the market where it comes from. And this could be achieved through two ways. One, when we think about international markets or developing international markets, one way is by exporting the fruit from one country where it's grown to another country where it is consumed. The second way to develop an international market for your new variety is to take the plant and to have production or growing and supply in the markets where it's consumed. And I'll talk a little bit about that, both of those methods in my slides following. So based on those benefits of achieving a larger scale, we should ask ourselves the question, is it possible? And generally speaking, yes. Consumers in high-value markets are interested in new fruit types and new fruit varieties. It could be a type of fruit they've never seen before. So, for example, perhaps in Greenland, they have never seen dragon fruit before. And so it could be a way to develop a new market with a fruit that is very new to that market, completely new. Or it could be that it's a new color of dragon fruit with a better flavor that is being supplied to a market. So it could be completely new, or it could be improved or better than, with some differences compared to existing ones. So the consumer's interest in new fruit types and new fruit varieties are based on long-term drivers or trends for consumers. They're looking for flavour, aroma or smell, texture, the mouthfeel of eating a new food product, colour, size. They're also looking for novelty, something that makes a category interesting or exciting, not boring. They're also looking for food products that are sustainably and ethically produced and supplied to them. For example, fair trade certified fruit could be seen to be different compared to a fruit that does not have that certification. So there are these fundamental consumer drivers that mean there is an opportunity to establish new international markets for your new varieties. When choosing an international market, we should first of all look at markets that have a high value opportunity. I don't just mean individual countries. It could be a city, or it could be a segment of the population. For example, it could be young people, or it could be old people. It could be for children. That where there is the potential interest and the willingness to pay for something new, different, or better. Another factor to consider in selecting which international markets to aim for first is accessibility. And there are two aspects to that. One is the practical aspect of logistics, transport. Direct shipping for fresh fruit is preferable because if you have transshipping, it takes a longer transit time and there is a greater loss of fruit in transit is more difficult. So at least at the first stage, I would suggest starting with international markets if you're exporting, where there is a good direct shipping link. A second aspect of accessibility is, of course, whether the government-to-government arrangements exist for plant health, phytosanitary market access. And with fresh fruit, it depends a lot on the plant health status in both countries and whether the two governments of those countries have reached agreement on the terms and conditions for access. So those are the two most important things to consider in choosing an international market to expand to. I have a couple of suggestions at the bottom there in blue, tips or suggestions. One is start with a small number of markets. Again, it's pretty obvious, so I'm sure most of you know this. But also, because don't try to keep it simple at the beginning, because fresh fruit is a perishable product, and it takes a while to get your system working well, to get the value chain working well. But also, if the supply volume is not enough, don't have to send it to the very biggest market. It could be enough to have a very profitable, successful position in a small or medium-sized market. So choose one or two markets initially and build from there. Second tip is, of course, that GAP programs will support your access to international markets and to your customers. Customers, retailers, and consumers, they will want to know that your product is GAP certified, global GAP or local GAP, and that is a seal of quality and reassurance for them. But also, the GAP program helps you to grow and supply the product to follow the conditions of the phytosanitary market access. So GAP programs are very important for developing international markets. Next slide, please. Think about what is your product. When we're talking about a new fruit variety, it's important to have thought about what do you want your fruit to be. That's what I mean by a product. So it could be a standard product that is good quality, that is consistent quality, and that has a competitive price. Or do you want your product to be, and has it got the potential to be, a differentiated product? Differentiated, by that I mean that it is better than the existing ones, or is completely new. And in the same way that I talked about before, flavour, aroma, texture, colour or size could be some of the factors that are different. It could be that it's more convenient, that it's easy to peel or easier to eat. We think of easy peel mandarins, citrus, being something that was new a few years ago, and that led to an increase in consumption of easy peel fruit. Health and nutrition, something that has more health and nutrition benefits or characteristics for consumers. Origin, sustainability, food safety, something that's new or better. And if your product is good enough to have some new or some improved characteristics, you should be able to achieve a price higher than a commodity or a standard product. Now, my suggestion at the bottom here is we as a company have commissioned a lot of consumer sensory research to understand what consumers prefer when we're looking at new products, new fruit products, what they prefer and why. And one of the strongest results we always get is that consumers always say about existing fruit that's on the market, I love the taste of it, or it's really good, but the quality is so variable. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not good, so I don't know what to buy. I don't know how to buy this. On the other hand, some fruits and some suppliers are able to achieve consistent quality and the consumers are never disappointed. And that is the way to build a successful business. Even if your product is no different actually compared to the existing ones, but it is more consistent in quality, then you have a good competitive position. And this is another way that your GAP programs and your standards for growing can help you to develop international markets. Next slide, please. Many of you are far more expert than me in many of the technical aspects of fruit. And as you know, the product that you get, how you produce it, is a combination of its genetics, of the management, how it's grown, how it's harvested and how it's handled, and the environment in which it grows. And so you need to get that formula, that combination, to meet the requirements from the grower's point of view. It needs to grow well, so productivity and yield, pest and disease management. It also needs to, that combination, it needs to deliver the requirements for the supply chain, and particularly for international markets with a longer shelf life and not so sensitive to bruising or damage because of the additional handling required to send it overseas. And thirdly, you need to have your production and supply system to deliver fruit that meets the consumer's requirements. And as I mentioned before, if you can achieve not only good quality but consistent quality, then the consumer will recognise your product as being the one they want to buy. Next slide, please. Quality standards are important to have. So many of us are working with smaller growers and we want to make them successful. And how to achieve consistency and scale is to have a good quality system and technical support for all of your growers, whether they're big growers or small growers. And so the central coordinating point for your fruit variety should implement quality standards and provide technical assistance. And for example, the kinds of parameters that should be included in a quality standard for your fruit would be bricks, dry matter, texture or pressure, maturity indices, like starch, colour, size, blemishes, defects, etc. All of those points should be clarified to what is the acceptable standard required, because then you are able to deliver the consistent quality that consumers want, but also a product good enough to be shipped and stored and sold successfully over long distance, as well as locally. Those standards and specifications, of course, fit very well with GAP programs, GAP programs. You want to have more than one standard or for grade or class, because you want the grower to be successful needs to sell all of their production. So you might have a class 1 and a class 2, depending on the different markets. And you also need to have similar standards for post-harvest, for your cool chain temperature, time, atmosphere, conditions, and in many cases, a new fruit, you need to do some research to understand what are the different requirements post-harvest for this new variety. And finally, quality inspections are important to make sure that you're selecting and preparing and shipping product that meets your standards. Next slide, please. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the opportunities to develop international markets for new fruit varieties that are protected by plant variety rights or plant breeders' rights or plant patents, depending on the term that's used in different countries. So these protected new fruit varieties do present some additional opportunities. And as I mentioned before, you can develop new markets either by exporting fruit, or you can establish controlled, managed production in the market where you want to sell it. And that's possible if you own the rights to the variety. Then you can control or organize how you want it to be grown in different countries. This will allow you to, if your fruit is a seasonal fruit, it will allow you to have supply for a longer period during the year, and that means your fruit is more interesting for the major retailers, the major supermarkets. If you're just a seasonal product, then they'll think of you only once a year. But if you're a product like, for example, bananas, in most markets, they are supplied 12 months of the year, and they're a major category, and every supermarket must have bananas, and every consumer will buy bananas. If you're just a seasonal product, then it's much more difficult to be important or to be appreciated by the supermarkets. So having more than one production location allows you to have 12-month or longer supply and to be more relevant for retailers. It allows you to capture or to have a bigger market by supplying from more places for more time around the year, and it allows you to support what I would call a premium product strategy. And if the variety is owned by a breeder, a research organisation or another breeder, then they can get fees or royalty income from the rights to grow this variety in different countries, which they can then use to reinvest to continuously improve the product, to support their local growers and other stakeholders. So it's very much a win-win opportunity. Next slide, please. So a premium commercialization strategy, this is not the only way to do it. You can have a standard product, you can have one that's a little bit better or new and improved in some ways. A premium commercialization strategy can get what I mean by that is a 25 to 50% higher price compared to another product or fruit in the same category. And there are consumers in many countries, not only the countries with the bigger economies, but consumers in developing countries where they are increasingly having rising living standards and disposable income. And so with a variety that has good characteristics, we use a controlled release strategy for planting in different countries, under license, supported by quality standards, including your GAP, and with some branding, marketing, and promotion. Then there are many examples of how a new product has gone on to become regarded as a premium, like a Rolls-Royce car. Well, these are the Rolls-Royce of fruit in their categories. Next slide, please. So in commercializing plant variety right protected new varieties, you need to think about what is your strategy, and they're all available for you, but you have to choose one. You need to consider moving the plant material through quarantine to different countries, establishing your plant variety right registration in that country, and then undertaking trials and evaluation there. So it's a long process. You need to have each of the key steps along the way covered by agreements. Next slide, please. One point, just finally, to conclude about trials and evaluation, this is a good investment to make in your new fruit variety, whether you're looking to grow it only at home or to take it more internationally through export or through controlled production in other countries. Because you're basically trying to get growers to invest in growing this new variety and marketers and post-harvest operators to invest in handling it. And the more information you have about the performance of your new variety, not only in production, but also post-harvest, and also how well it eats from a consumer point of view, the more information you have about that, the more you can give confidence to the growers and others who need to invest to grow it. So finally, new fruit varieties will continue to make all of the fruit categories more interesting for customers and consumers. And so this is, again, a win-win for all of us. Not everything needs to be a brand new and improved variety, but it will help to make fruit more interesting if there is enough innovation happening. So I would like to thank you all for your contribution to the global development and growing supply of new fruit varieties. Thank you.